Tell me, Elena, if you were looking for unicorns, where would you be searching for them?
Okay, I could be searching in Fortnite. I could go to Diablo. I could go to my dreams.
Okay, but I mean in real life. I mean
in real life.
More than real life, in the business life.
Okay, in the business life, I don't think I can find a unicorn, but we have 3 people that are expert in finding unicorns. You mean business unicorn?
Authentic unicorn searchers. We're talking about 3 of the most important investors in the European ecosystem, and they are looking for those unicorns in our continent. We're talking about David Gardner, who is the general partner at London Venture Partners, Alexis Bonte, who is the COO still from the group, and also an investment partner at Atomico, and the legend of the industry, Ian Livingstone, partner of Hero Capital.
Okay, so if you guys, any of you are thinking in building your new business, launching a game, are thinking how to become rich and make big money out of your business, I think this is a really interesting talk for you.
Yeah, it's a session where you can learn a lot of things from their experience and vision, and also remember that you have to be in the side of this kind of people when you want to build your company and to grow it. So listening to them might be very inspiring and useful for your career and your businesses.
Okay. Ivan, do you think that they are ready?
I'm sure they are ready. I don't know exactly where they are. Probably Alexis Bonte will be in Madrid. David will be in London, and as well in London will be Ian Livingstone. Let's find out. Hello, the 3 of you. I was going to say the 3 amigos. Let's go. Are you there?
Great, thank you so much, Elena and Ivan. It's really interesting to be here amongst old friends. Ian and I have worked in the games industry for a very long time, and Alexis has been one of the recent success stories of building and selling companies, and it's been great to get to know him over the years. I'm really interested in learning from you guys, what you think is going to be key in building the next champion out of Europe. We've been so lucky to have so many incredible champions of many billion-dollar exits between the Supercells and the Mojangs and the Kings, and it's just been incredible. Do you guys think this is going to continue? Is this Europe's sweet spot?
I think Europe in general is a very creative place to be, and also had an early adopter of high technology. You put high tech in the hands of creative people, hey presto, one of the outcomes is video games. And I think the UK in particular, and Europe as well, of course, has punched above its weight in content creation, but has always been underserved by capital. So I think it's done well despite local capital. But given the interest in the sector, I think you're going to see even more great studios and great content emerge from Europe in the not too distant future. I mean, what is for sure is that the industry is driven by changing technology like no other entertainment industry. And it's always additive, whereas in the music, it tends to be substitutional, new formats, new technologies additive to the overall experience and the opportunities. So I think the future is very bright.
Yeah, no, I agree with Ian. Also, I think there's two important things to remember for the games industry in Europe and at large. I think the first thing is from an investor's perspective. Basically, actually in the past few years, games has been a great place to invest. It's the fastest road to liquidity in terms of exits. You've seen many companies go from zero to several hundred million, in certain cases several billion in revenues in the space of a few years. That's not something that you see commonly even in the top tech companies. Actually, when there was a venture partner at Atomico, we did a study and we realized that games was actually a unicorn factory in Europe, also in China and other places, but particularly in Europe. So I think that's definitely something that has established things. But now I think we're in a different phase. I think there's still very great opportunities in terms of doing scale, but I think now we're in a consolidation phase, especially in mobile free-to-play. There's some very interesting stats that show that actually the number of new games that come out on the app stores has really kind of fallen down from 3 to 4 years ago. We were getting almost 400,000 new games a year coming out. Now we're like probably around 30,000. So this is a 10-factor decrease. And the reason that has happened is the moats for success have increased a lot. You've got the big AAA players that are becoming better at free-to-play, very high production values, and starting to move their IPs, to mobile and to free-to-play. I mean, we've seen that with Call of Duty. And then you have the big winners in free-to-play, the Supercells, the Kings, and all that are coming with all their weight. And so the middle is getting squeezed. So basically, if you're in the middle and you have a nice business that's profitable, either you grow very quickly or you consolidate. So I think that's going to continue. And some of those companies in the middle are great companies and very profitable companies that can have, $1 billion outcomes or hundreds of millions of dollars outcomes. And for example, if you look at, in our case, it's Stillfront. We've recently made 2 acquisitions this year. Storm 8, with several hundred millions. We've also acquired Candy Writer. And more recently, you've seen the Zynga and the Peak acquisition, which was a $1.8 billion acquisition. So yeah, it's eating up.
I completely agree with all those stats. And what I'm amazed at is it does seem like it's hard for games companies to raise money. And I'm sure the audience, here, they're trying to figure out how do I raise capital? All 3 of us have been involved in providing capital, but it still seems really, really hard. And I see that, teams are at the very beginning of answering that question and don't really know how to ask for money. Or, I wonder what you guys are seeing. Is it the same from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's true of a lot of creative industries, businesses, is that if it's led by a creative person, they are absolutely crucial to the business. Without the creative person, that their vision will never be executed. And yet a lot of creative people don't know and are never investor ready. So there's kind of a misunderstanding of the investment community. On the investment community side, there's a misunderstanding of what makes a good game. So there's always been a kind of this disconnect between the creative and the money. And I think that's slowly being bridged over time as more people make themselves investor ready by partnering with business people to help them do the stuff they shouldn't be doing or can't do to be able to scale their businesses. And also on the other side, people, investment companies are hiring industry veterans to help them make more informed decisions on what they're going to invest in going forward. But I think a successful business for me these days is one that has a great creative and a great business partner in working in tandem to be able to scale whatever's a particularly fine product. I mean, I was an investor in Playdemic, seed investor, with Creative Golf Clash, and that was a perfect example of amazing creative in Alex Rigby and an amazing CEO in Paul Gooch.
Yeah. Alexis, what
actually, I think that at the seed level and the angel level, in Europe at least, there's a decent amount of money available, and I think good studios, good projects with strong management teams, can raise, because There's a few funds, like yourselves and other ones that really understand games, that are game specific, or that really understand that. There's a good strong angels, many people that have had exits in the game sector are now investing at the angel level. I mean, I probably personally do half a dozen to a dozen angel investments per year, and very often that's with other entrepreneurs from other game companies that have done it when their contracts allow them to do that, of course. So I think at that level is quite serious. I think that the problem was more like when you're moving to the next level, Series A and Series B, and the larger amounts. There wasn't that many people. I understand that Ian's fund is filling that gap somewhat now, more recently. But
we're trying to do that.
I think the main issue there was really with the generalist funds, the larger, big funds that usually they're to be frank, their strategy to invest in games was usually reliant on one partner that understood games. And if you basically lose that partner, then that fund simply stops investing in games. And there's not many, big European funds right now that are actively, investing in games in the way that I understand. Some American funds have kind of taken over. Anderson Horowitz, has a few people there now doing things and all that. But I think the problem is not so much at the early stage; it's more like at the later stage.
Well,
I mean, that's what we said. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just wondering, if we think about what's exciting, money will try to support it. What's going to be exciting coming out of Europe? What should we encourage the audience to really be building? Is it another, is it another match 3? Is it another copycat of another game? Don't take too much risk because it's so hard to get funded and get successful. Or I just wonder how we can encourage the audience to really figure out, what's next if we're thinking about what the champion is going to be.
Well, I don't think anyone really knows what's next. All you can do is follow trends. I mean, if you're trying to make Me Too products, that's a recipe for disaster. I mean, how can you compete against Candy Crush or Words with Friends or Clash of Clans, etc.? I mean, that's not hiding to nothing. So you have to look at what's happening in games in particular. So if you look at trends in terms of multiplayer, how games are becoming a metaverse. To see during the pandemic that the number of users on playing Fortnite has risen from 250 million to 350 million, and has effectively become the third space. The Travis Scott performance inside Fortnite had 12 million concurrent viewers and 24 million over time, and therefore people are going into these games not just to play but to be part of the community in what we're calling the metaverse. So if you look at trends like that and what's happening with esports, you can't ignore these audiences. So I think because of the changing youth culture, the change in technology, this dynamic change that's offered to the games industry, I think people should be looking at technology platforms and youth trends as much as anything, but be also be based on historical understanding, but and layering other things like gameplay, of course, being the most important thing for me as a games designer. But don't think you know everything, therefore you have to be supported by data. I mean, it's a very complex issue we could get ourselves into here, but I think you have to be future-facing but have a deep sense of history.
Yeah, I think to build on what Ian said, and if I was right now doing a startup, or what I look for when I'm potentially thinking of doing something with a startup, I think you have to look at two markets. First of all, I think you have to look at the premium market, and you have to look at the free-to-play market, and they are converging, but at the beginning they're still quite different. I think in terms of the premium market, it's for very confirmed team, there's very interesting opportunities with the kind of the platform wars in terms of alternative financing, where you can you can potentially find ways to get some funding there, which is interesting. With the free-to-play type market, I think the key thing, hyper casual is getting a lot of negative publicity right now. There's throwaway games, terrible games, all this advertising and all that. I don't believe that millions of people play a terrible game. That's not true. If millions of people play a game, it means that there's something good in there. Maybe then the business model, with tons of ads and all that, makes that game, a little worse. But I think there's something interesting there. And to me, the key there is the following. And the reason I'm going to there, I do think the real money is not in hyper casual. I think the real money will be later in the kind of more long life cycle. Casual to game development with very fast prototyping is extremely interesting. Because that allows you to
That's
find
kind of showing the way of what people like.
I think it's not only showing the way of what people like, but also potentially showing the way of some blue oceans. Because if you do a Me Too, as Ian was saying, if you do a Me Too product in a red ocean, as a startup, you have zero chance. But if you are able to iterate very quickly and fast prototype and find these pockets of blue oceans and things that people want and build from that, then that's really, really interesting. So I think this is where the opportunities are, at least in free to play. And that's kind of what I would do if I was doing a startup right now.
Yeah, it's a good question. I was wondering, what would when you answered that, what would you do if you were doing the startup? And of course, you most recently, I think, of all of us have done that. And I guess it's really hard to say, oh, go do this and you'll be successful. Ultimately, what I always want to make sure people are doing, they really love, because the hassle, the stress, the energy required means your passion has to be there to pull you through it all. And I've recently started enjoying getting into the product, and wanting to feel like, oh, I've invested in things that are making people smile and be happy. It's very fulfilling to feel like, okay, I'm working with a team that's doing, especially during lockdown, it can be depressing, but as you said, people are turning to games for entertainment, and it's been great to feel like I'm part of the solution. We're looking at a team now that's trying to do a lot of innovation around a first-person game, and it's fun to think about, how we can shape and be involved in that creative process. And that I guess we're living vicariously. But I feel like the passion is the core piece, and then you have to have some of the business common sense and the red ocean comment of, do you try to do something in the middle of a very, very crowded space, or do you start from a different angle to build your exposure and your and your community? So I think what's so great in Europe is that the creative levels are super high, and people do tend to really take things from that creative perspective first and foremost. They're not taking the kind of, well, how do I make loads of money, and what do I need to do in order to do that? And I think
if the objective for a startup games company is to make money, they're probably in the wrong industry. I think you can be successful. You need to be driven by passion, and then success is a byproduct of your passion, which you've executed. So I always make sure when I invest is that people with scars on their back, they love what they do, and they've had a tough time in doing it, but they've persisted. And that's why I think the indie scene has grown so well, because they have had a lot of injuries along the way, but there's great innovation in the indie scene, and yet it doesn't really get talked about in the mass market, and particularly not in the investment community. So you can see great innovation in indie games, and less so in the more established larger studios and publishers. And that's what always gives me hope. And I'm sure people have a vision, and then they can execute it. I mean, even small teams can be successful, like Stardew Valley or Slay the Spire, and they can sell millions of units and be successful. But are they still investable propositions? Depends on what they want to do next. Some people have limited ambition on how they want to build a business, particularly in the UK. There's often a cottage industry mentality whereby they're happy with what they're doing. They don't have to report to shareholders and have board meetings and interference and give up some of their control, and they're happy trying to do it on their own. So there's lots of things.
But then
go, Alex.
Sorry, but then what they're doing. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
I just wanted to say, getting back to the original question, because I kind of gone away from that. Just some of the things that I look for personally is, just a kind of a checklist apart from the team is, are they addressing cross-platform? Are they thinking about subscription business models? What business models are they doing? What about digital goods? How are they going to do that? Are they aware of what's happening around loot boxes as within law? How they view games as a community, and what is their cloud offering, and are they device neutral? I mean, there's lots of things that people should be considering when they're trying to make the next big thing.
Yeah, but I think there's one thing I obsess about when I look at a team now. And yes, there's all these things that you just said, and the scars and team that has been proven and all that sort of stuff and all that. But I think if at the end of the day, if you're not building just a lifestyle business and it's an investable business, yes, it's great if they've got an original concept, like David was saying, where it's that feel-good game that are managing to find something that is a blue ocean. But at the end of the day, I really like to look at how the team is actually structured and geared towards not just doing a passion project, but really geared towards speed of learning, speed of execution, and speed of scaling. Speed. And I know you've got to balance that with quality and passion, but somehow I feel like if they're able to put something in front of people very quickly and learn very quickly, rather than just, during 2 years, develop something in isolation that looks amazing, only to find out when they put it in front of people that it just doesn't work.
Nobody cares.
I think, to me, that's uninvestable.
Speed is the advantage that a startup has over the big dreadnought companies. So they have to use that as a key feature, I think. But I don't know how, I was thinking, how do we balance, of course, innovation and the passion, but then they have to have ambition levels. So, I can't invest in somebody who just wants to build a game for themselves. They have to want to build something that's going to be attractive and that they're going to create value around the company. And so it's so hard to balance that kind of cottage industry with the kind of ambition levels of building something global and multi-platform and bringing in the audience. And then what you were saying, Alexis, around speed. And it's been so hard with some of the projects. We've been doing more on PC, and these are often 2 to 3 year projects. And it just, when you see the speed of the marketplace, it's terrifying, because you think, well, you've got to break that 3 to 4 year project down into pieces that get into consumers' hands much, much earlier, so that you don't end up, as you were saying, in an ivory tower, having built this kind of opus, and then you bring it out and nobody cares anymore. So what have you guys seen? How have people been able to break it down? Have you seen success stories in that approach?
Silence.
No, it's too hard, right? I mean, that's
silence of the lambs.
I don't know. I think it's.
Yeah.
I'll let Ian speak about premium, because he has more expertise than I. I definitely see it in free to play.
Well, premium.
The challenge you're saying is in premium and PC, right? PC and console. Yeah.
I mean, clearly there's still a huge market for premium, and everyone's getting hugely excited about on what's happening with Unreal and the next generation of consoles, and there's going to be a huge upsurge. I mean, as I said earlier, all these new opportunities, whether it's esports, AR, VR, mixed reality, mobile, they're all additive to an existing market. They don't replace. Yeah. So there's always an excitement opportunity. But the rich tend to get richer in the AAA space as more resource gets put into creating the content and more resources put into promoting that content to keep it in its keep them in their rightful, not necessarily rightful, but in their premier position in terms of sales. That doesn't mean to say other people can't enter that market. What I worry about is it a case of roast duck or no dinner? Is it AAA or no way? Is there room for a AA title? And in the old world, where we used to make physical media, when I was chairman of IDOS and we launched Tomb Raiders, there was a huge, much more risk attached to making games, because it was you couldn't go direct to consumer, so you had to spend an awful lot of money, millions and millions, developing a product without much understanding of whether or not that would be successful, build physical inventory, manage the supply chain and distribution channel, perhaps get returns when you weren't expecting them, and then managing that inventory returns, all before having $1 of revenue. But today, of course, going direct to consumer, with soft launch and getting data and understanding and being able to, with the games as a service, improve that content over time and add additional content and monetize people in different ways. And the risk factor is actually a lot less. But I'm still not sure if there's still room for AA titles as well as AAA titles in the high-end interactive cinematic experiences you see.
I think there will be for different audiences. Maybe, maybe if you're a AAA hardcore player, you're full with your time. But I think what I love is the expansion of the audience. So more girls are playing. People of different age groups, different genres. That people who would say, "Oh, I don't really normally play games," but then they love playing something that is maybe more of a storytelling game and things that are pulling. So I think because now we don't have.
Is there a room for AA content to be made rather than spending $50 million on making an established AAA?
I mean,
title?
there has to be.
Is there room for a $10 million production? And if so, what price can you charge for that?
Yeah.
I think there is, Ian. I think there is, but it's a different approach. I think you're seeing those games. If they're about games as a service, that basically rather than have these massive launches up front and try and recoup all of those, that 100 million or 200 million up front, you can see them. If they're multiplayer and they're well made, maybe in the first year they don't make that much money, but in the second year, third year, fourth year, they just build up. And we've seen a few cases of those on Steam, which we all know. So I think there's still a space for those, and these are definitely works of love and craft. And what happens is they go quite early. They go quite early in early access, and maybe they have a 1 year or even a year and a half career in early access where they're just continuing to build the games. And these games are maybe not AAA when they launch. But by the time 3 or 4 years have passed of community and multiplayer and features and all that, they are as big or as interesting as AAA games. And I think that approach still has potential.
What genres do you guys think are really, or maybe it's even platforms or audiences, but what do you think has a strong potential coming up?
Well, I think mobile has still got a huge amount of upside. There's still large parts of the world that do not have smartphones. There's large chunks of the population that aren't playing mobile games, even though you think everybody is when you're just looking around. It'd be crazy to ignore mobile, but of course it's a very crowded market. I mean, what is the crowded market? For every Angry Birds, there's probably 10,000 dead birds out there. So how are you going to find pick winners in what is a very crowded market? I mean, the App Store is the world's smallest shop window. 2 million apps trying to reach 2 billion people through this tiny aperture. So it's challenging in terms of user acquisition and retention and monetization. I think we're all aware of those problems. But again, that's part of the due diligence process when you're looking at teams. Do they understand how to reach their addressable audience in a meaningful manner? Do they understand the whole journey of original costs, ongoing costs, lifetime value, and data? It's not that easy to run the games as a service if you haven't done it before, for sure.
Actually, I think there's still a lot of opportunities. I think first of all, on the App Store, let's remember, number of new games every year that come out has gone down from 300 to 400,000, a year to 28,000, depending on the stats that you get, So you get a lot more chances of, if your game is strong, of actually showing up. The number of live games still on the store is actually down to 450, 460 million, and is basically stable. It's not growing. So that's interesting. That also means, of course, there's bigger barriers to entry, bigger modes in mobile. So that's why there's a challenge there. But I think there's still a huge opportunity there. And being very optimistic, we just came out with a number for the Stillfront. So for our 14 studios across all our games, we reached 2 billion. That's 2 billion, installs.
Wow.
But there's 10 billion people in the world, so we can still do times 5. So that's fine.
Nice upside.
But then there's upside still. But more seriously, I think the interesting thing about the 2 billion is the majority of players, first of all, are female. So I think that's really interesting. And there's a lot of game genres that I think are still very underrepresented in mobile. I mean, how many adventure games are there on mobile? Like really high quality Zelda-esque adventure games? Very few. These, these top the charts. And if you look down, if you look back 2-3 years ago, how many first-person shooter games was there on mobile? When first-person shooters, if you took the top 10 in terms of revenues on PC and console, first-person shooters were probably occupying 60% of that top 10. There was probably 0 first-person shooters on mobile 3 years ago in the top 10. Now you've got Fortnite,
that's not
you've got Call of Duty. Yeah,
I mean, you can understand why. I mean, screen size and virtual joysticks were not really the go-to medium for first-person shooters, and now they've found a way to make it, work. But it wasn't an immediate choice for that kind of gaming.
Yeah.
I mean, it was to address a new audience. It was for those people who didn't, or couldn't, or wouldn't play games because they were intimidated by 15-button controllers. And along comes Apple with touchscreen. Swipe your finger across the screen and you can start playing. Hence, huge rise in casual gaming, and everyone can become a gamer, even those people who don't consider themselves gamers. And I think that clearly that's still a very big opportunity to reach a global market at scale with casual games. So I think for me, the mobile device is better suited to casual than it is hardcore.
One team I love says that their mission is to help people make friends while playing games, and the whole rise of cooperative play. We know that player versus player certainly can drive monetization because you're spending money to kind of level up and compete. But it's nice to see a new way of socializing and pulling your friends through and working cooperatively on things. I think that's an interesting growth area, as well as seeing female and male audiences play as well. Just what you were saying, Alexis, that whole stat, amazing to see the growth in the female game player, or I don't know if they would call themselves gamers, but they're in the community, and it's enriching it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, well, you can see why co-op and multiplayer games are in the ascendancy, because we are social animals. Single player games arrived because that was determined by the nature of the platforms that were available at the time. But now with technology able to facilitate co-op and multiplayer games real time, clearly you'd rather play with somebody rather than on your own. I mean, not exclusively,
and it's social distancing proof.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
No transmission of bad diseases. I'm staggered how many match 3 games are out there, and every time I think surely we can't have another one, then another $1 billion transaction goes through for another match. Is this just? Should we just accept?
Well, I think it's I don't think that many of them will be successful, but what they can do, I think we're seeing greater visibility, is that's a match 3 is a mechanic that people everywhere knows and understands. So you can use that as in a sort of hybrid fashion to facilitate or generate currency to play a part of another game, like they've done with Gardner games, etc., where you're doing a function of match 3 to create currency to do something else within the large part of the game.
Yeah.
So I think that hybrid model is working quite well. Use combining a match 3 or casual game mechanic to generate currency inside the main game.
Yeah, I absolutely, Ian. And actually, if you look at it now, one of the reasons we acquired Stormate is that's exactly what they were doing. They were doing this, this mashup of a match 3 with a decorating game, right? And if you look at Property Brothers, that's a game that's was launched very recently, and it's broken into the top 100 grossing, during COVID. So you can still definitely make it big with match 3, but you've got to find that meta game, that angle, to make it work.
Yeah. I mean, that's the exciting thing about the games industry. There's always innovation, which leads to a whole new genre. I mean, branching narrative has suddenly become, strong again, and storytelling has become strong, and there's, that's what keeps it constantly exciting. Linear media is relatively fixed in its ability to deliver content, and whereas games technology can innovate at extraordinary levels. I mean, the games industry today versus the games industry 20 years ago is almost unrecognizable. I think that's what gets us all very excited almost on a daily basis to see what new propositions are being put in front of us.
Actually, your point about storytelling is super interesting, because one area that we're seeing exploding is story-driven games. Starting from the very basic, episode type game to the completely emerging type game so we acquired Candy Writer, who has BitLife, which is also based on storytelling. So it seems like storytelling is making a big comeback. Do you think that's a natural evolution?
Yeah, I mean, in the old days, storytelling and other parts of what we understand as entertainment was not added to games because it was all about the game and the delivery of the graphics and the puzzles, etc. But now we would need a much more fulfilling story to make it a much more compelling experience, and branching stories as well has become, as you said, with choices and episodes. I'm also an investor in Fusebox that does the Love Island game, which has been having extraordinary success right now. So I think people like to have control, and with my old Fighting Fantasy game books, giving agency to players who read them, them making decisions is a much more compelling experience than a linear novel where you cede control to the author and you just watch in a passive way. So giving people agency is the why games are so compelling, but therefore providing a layer of great story on top of that makes it an even more fulfilling experience.
So when are we seeing game versions of your books, Ian? You're the inventor of this.
Yeah, I'm waiting for someone to turn it into a big MMO. Is everybody out there? Give me a call.
We'll have to have AI where you can just scan the books, the AI will read the books, and then it will write the code for the game. So then that's
Fantastic.
what Demis will do that for us.
Yeah, here's a startup idea just there.
That's right. Well, maybe, I don't know exactly how much time we have left, but I wonder if we should talk about investors and try to help talk about what investors can do for teams to maybe bridge the gap. And would that be good? What do you
Sure.
guys think that what do you guys think investors can do for startups?
Well, clearly
Beyond
they
the
can
money.
give. Yeah, beyond the money. I mean, I think that should be the name of the session. Beyond the money. I mean, that's kind of a given. So what I think people like to see is people don't like to be put upon. They don't like to be. The studios don't want to feel that their investment partner is interfering. But if you can give them insight into stuff they don't know about, or leverage experience. I've been in games 45 years. I'd like to think I can give them some insight and experience and advice that has meaning from terms of games design, from running a studio to marketing to PR to platforms to scaling to data to anything that I've had the experience with. I'm sure, I know that most of them are appreciative of that, and they think that you're adding value in multiple ways, and if you can help them realize their ambition and dreams quicker than they would have done on their own, clearly you're adding huge value. Of course, you're going to benefit from that because they're going to be more successful. But I like to be quite hands-on, and like to have my own finger as many gaming pies as possible, hoping I can add value.
Yeah. So actually, I've changed my mind quite a lot about what investors can do, and I learned a little bit, as a venture partner at Atomico and how things were being done there. And I'm also learning because if you think about Stillfront, we're a decentralized alliance of 14 studios, so we almost behave like an investor. I mean, the difference is we acquire the studios, so the studios are we have a majority stake or 100% stake of it, but we really behave like investors. I think if from a strict normal investor, I think the number one duty of an investor at the beginning, especially a seed investor, is to help them raise more money. So I'm sorry, I'm going to stick with money, and from the right people. I think the first thing is help them raise more money, and from the right people, set them up to be successful at doing that. And then I think the key thing is you want an investor to understand games, because you want an investor that knows when to stay out of the way and knows when to help. Because there's nothing worse than an investor that tries on, and design your game for you and tells you, and my kid, liked this and didn't like that or whatever. So you really need an investor that knows how to stay out of the way, understand that you're running the show, and do that sort of stuff. And then it's a fun thing, because at Stillfront, managing a portfolio of studios is kind of the same approach. It's about insights, it's about finding collaborations, finding the right people to help you, and it's really, at the end of the day, what can you do to help that studio accelerate its growth by being as little active with that studio as you can, as light touch as you can, because Supercell has it right, all the decisions, as much of the decisions as possible, need to be with the game team, as close as the game team. So all you can do is basically support and remove obstacles from them. So I think that's really how I see the role of an investor, is a facilitator, a remover of obstacles, and an accelerator. That's it.
Yeah, agree with all that.
And what about things like, like helping them think through the strategy of what they're doing or what market they're playing in, and finding people? Do you think that that's too invasive, or
No, not at all. If you see value in them doing something that they're not doing, and you can make that happen, you should. I mean, and a lot of studios, you say, oh, we don't know how to get into China. So if you've got good relationships with China, use them. And other partnerships that you can do with platform holders, or with knowing somebody who can get the game featured on whatever platform that might be as well. So it's all about relationships and partnerships, and leveraging our own contact list to help get them up the ladder of being noticed.
Yeah, I think being a connector, I completely agree with Ian. Strategy, I get a little worried. I think you can nudge them, help them, with insights, with information. But I think, honestly, a management team that relies on its investors for its strategy is a weak team that I would not invest in.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because you really can't do the work for them. They have to. No. They have to have this strength, but I guess you can help challenge and refine. You can't provide. You can't provide the answers. You have to. I was going to.
You can ask the question, but don't give the seed stage.
At seed stage, I think you can. You could bring somebody in to run the business for them if they're amazing at making a game but couldn't run a bath. Find somebody who can. And at
Alexis,
seed stage,
I think you're the full package, or you're not the full package. If you're incapable, even at seed stage, to get at least the basic people that you need to do everything, I'm not investing in you.
Yeah, I mean,
I have a different approach.
And that's why I think they're different investors. I mean, I would agree with both of you guys. In some, you have a superstar that just can't run a bath. You give them a shower. I mean, sometimes it's you. And then there are other kinds of investors that absolutely agree with you too, Alexis. And partly it's interesting to see, you can I found that you can't really make some team doesn't have it and isn't successful. You can't make them successful, but you can accelerate the success of teams that are already quite good. You can give them that extra.
Yeah, wearing my hero VC hat, I would expect the team to be fully functional. It's a question of scale rather than trying to build something from scratch, clearly.
Yeah. Guys,
I think we're out of time.
I think we're out of time. It's amazing how fast it flies.
Has the alarm gone?
The alarm is here.
One more minute.
I'm back in.
Para todo.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm back in. Thank you so much. I have one last question, if you don't mind. In this new world where most of the people are now working from home, social distance, the studios, even the biggest studios, have everyone at home as well, working apart. From an investor's perspective, you will find probably a lot of proposals, a lot of teams that will come with the idea of working apart, right? From different part of the world, not even in the same city. Is that a challenge, or do you see any challenge there, or something that will prevent you or make it more difficult to succeed, being, I don't know, someone that is living in Barcelona, working with someone who's living in London, someone like is living in Montevideo? Do you see any?
It's hard, but it's not impossible. Is my view. I think we are all experiencing this, and it's softening our willingness to consider. Normally, I don't like it. Normally, I would really like the core team in one location, and then you have maybe outsourcing or complete pieces that are in other locations. But I'm more open to it. It just means more diligence and more ensuring that the team is committed to communication and working it out and having a great process to make it work. But I just think it increases complexity. But there are other benefits around costs and quality of life and things. That's my view.
Yeah, and I think the games industry, paradoxically, is one of the few industries' success stories during the pandemic. Revenues are up, and it's business as usual for developers work from home. But all the companies have transitioned almost seamlessly to remote working. I think it might be a bigger challenge getting them all back into the office environment. But the video games industry kind of ticks all the right boxes for kind of a post-COVID world. It's high-tech, high-skills export, regional IP creating. Its time is now. And the games industry, I think, is very able to work remotely better than
I've lost sound. I don't know what if you guys can hear me. I've lost sound.
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, you're there. Okay.
Perfect.
We've lost
Yeah, no, I think. Okay, perfect. I think very quickly, we have an interesting view because we have a view across 14 studios of the impact to work organization of COVID, and we've actually seen no downside to work from home for live games. So everything that's under live operations with teams that know exactly what they need to work on and all that hasn't slowed down. It's even potentially better. But we are seeing that it's a bit harder for when you have to create a new game from scratch for that kind of process. Just being around the coffee machine and exchanging there does help with that. I mean, there's reasons Pixar has built their offices in a certain way and all that. So I think a bit of that gets lost when you work from home. So I think I would have more flexibility about that, but I would want to see a core team meeting at least regularly, weekly in a central location.
Okay, thank you so much for that last answer. Once again, it's been a privilege to have you here, the three of you, good friends of Gamelab, and hopefully we can meet soon in Barcelona or London or wherever we can. And thank you especially for helping us putting together this investors and publishing space at Gamelab, where dozens of game companies are participating, dozens of investors and publishers as well. And we hope to see those teams grow and those investors and publishers doing a good business with them. Thank you for helping me putting together that part of the show as well. And let's get together soon, okay? As soon as the pandemic allows us to travel.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you,
Gamelab.
Ivan.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.